The hooded woman whispered that Lady Juliana had been found. Another insisted that she was exactly the younger sister of His Highness the Archduke, who had long been missing in the forest. The third asked again in surprise, because she was sure that she had died. She was advised to speak more quietly and watch her language in any case, and the lady must have been happy, because she had been looking for her for so long. It was dead night outside. The full moon shyly hid behind the black clouds, only occasionally appearing in all its glory. The driver in dark and inconspicuous clothes called out to the horses, "Purr!" and the black carriage creaked to a stop. There were footsteps. A young guy came forward. He said, "Here you are," giving his hand. A blonde could be seen from the carriage window. The guy smiled and supported the person getting out of the carriage. He smiled at her joyfully. A blonde man, accompanied by several dozen girls in identical clothes, came out to greet the arriving person. He congratulated her on her return home. A young busty lady with blonde hair came out of the carriage cabin. Her face did not express any emotion. It was Lady Juliana. The red-haired man escorted the girl to the room. He opened the door to it. He said that this was the room that she used and that everything in it was left as it was. The girl looked around the room with a sinking heart, and the guy was already leaving. He said that he would hurry to inform Mother and let her settle down for now. The heroine's heart was jumping out of her chest with excitement. She wondered how much time had passed since then, and she admitted to herself that she wanted to breathe this air so badly. Through the window, she saw a tall, muscular guy. Someone shouted, "Bianut is out." Meanwhile, he was getting dressed. The blonde was surprised at the sight. She and the red-haired man watched as the clergyman sprinkled water on the tall, kneeling big man. It was Bianut Barenhag, her older brother and the owner of this castle. The girl was hanging out of the window looking out. She thought that even where she had been before, she had heard a lot about Archduke Barenhag. Meanwhile, the girls threw loose clothes over his shoulders. The heroine recalled that she had definitely heard this name somewhere before. The red-haired man said that the girl seemed glad to see her brother again. The blonde shuddered, and she answered that it was not so. The guy was surprised to hear this. He wound a lock of her hair around his finger and said that he wished she were the real Juliana. The red-haired one said that if she tried, her brother could become her strength. The girl squeezed the hem of her dress and clarified in what sense she needed to try. The guy laughingly replied that she should have tried to become a real younger sister. The blonde timidly asked how much His Highness needed a girl named Juliana. She answered bitterly that she was not Juliana, whom he was looking for. She was just running errands in a brothel. The girl bowed, nodding her head. She insisted that she only wanted to return to where she was originally. The guy thought that she was too honest for someone who grew up in a public place. The girl sneezed. The redhead realized how low her origins were. He suggested with a smile that she should rest today. The guy left the room, finally wishing her peaceful dreams. The girl's heart beat faster. She squeezed the hem of her dress from excess emotion. The hem of the dress rustled. The girl collapsed staggeringly onto the edge of the bed. She thought that the journey here took a long time and she was very tired. A little later, dressed and with shoes on, she rolled onto the bed. She couldn't remember the last time she slept in a bed like this. Birds flew and chirped in the morning sky. The door to the girl's room creaked. She shuddered sleepily in surprise. Opening her sleepy eyes, she remembered that yesterday he was going to war. A man in a blue cloak was accompanied by warriors with weapons. And then she remembered where she heard the name Bianut Barenhag. A woman was sitting at a table in the garden and writing. A girl ran up to her. Her eyes were sad. She said something to the woman about this letter. But the mother laughed at the child's worries. She assured the little girl that she had nothing to worry about. The girl pouted. There was something written on the paper that she didn't understand, and there was a stamp on it. The woman took the girl in her arms. She announced that she would tell her what love is. She assured that this was a raw feeling, as if fire were spreading in the chest just from the opportunity to feel a loved one. She said that she would like the girl to experience it too. The baby made surprised round eyes. The mother said that this is why the father canceled her engagement. The girl said that she was afraid that the fire might hurt her. The woman hugged her daughter, pressing her cheek, and said that her Krisha was so gentle. It was the only happy time in her life. At this time, she was the princess of Crandia. Krisha Benedict, second princess of the kingdom of the Crandia family. This is her other name. The Benedict family, under which peace and tranquility reigned in the kingdom, was destroyed by an unexpected uprising. Then, as a 9-year-old girl, she fortunately managed to survive in that hell. However, under the new name Maria, she had to continue living in another hell. The girl looked out the ajar door. In winter, she carried water from an old well. The rusty mechanisms creaked as the girl filled buckets with water. Her hands were freezing and buckets would sometimes escape from her frozen fingers. But even when she wanted to give up everything and give up, there was a reason that kept her in this world. Our heroine once overheard a conversation by accident. From the general noise and hubbub, she heard something important. They said that some aristocrat was looking for a princess here. Another of the interlocutors was surprised. He believed that if there was a princess in this dirty hole, he would be the first to sell her. The lady who served those men asked if she should pretend to be a princess. The man cursed angrily, ordering her to shut up and smash the glass to pieces. The girl could not understand who was looking for her. The man asked what the name of that hopeless dreamer was. His comrade answered him by clearing his throat that it seemed he had been seen at Manhwa-Hub Cathedral. Then he really had a hard time remembering the name Johannes. Our heroine did not remember this, but he could be a supporter of the Benedict family or a relative who survived the war. But it was just a rumor, which they quickly lost interest in and quickly forgot. But for the girl, he became the only hope. And this was also the reason to agree to Stefan's offer to leave with him. The birds chirped happily. The girl, having slept, got out of bed and went to the window. 2 cheerful and bright yellow-green creatures were jumping right next to the glass. The girl just noticed how beautiful it was here. At some point, a delicate, almost transparent insect landed on her finger. She considered that this was a small gift from God for her experience of hell, and let her stay here for a while, but I wanted to feel it fully. There was a knock on her door. A girl came in wearing a dark dress and a snow-white apron. She wished the lady good morning. The red-haired girl introduced herself by the name Balin, and she said that from now on she would serve her. She bowed and assured that they would take good care of her. Soon there was a teapot and a cup on the table for the lady. The porcelain dishes clinked gently. The maid began to undress the girl, untying her dress and lowering it down. Our heroine was very embarrassed. Valen began to lower her underwear from the girl's shoulder, but she shuddered and asked in a whisper not to do this, assuring that she could do the rest herself, which puzzled and upset the maid a little. After sitting on the edge of the bed for a while, Balin realized that she should have brought new dresses for her mistress. The only blonde left was giggling heartily. Then the girl, while waiting, decided to take a walk to stretch her back and neck. She went to the window and opened one of its doors. There was a knock on the door and she thought it was Balin who had returned. But it wasn't a maid who came in. The red-haired guy quickly entered and smiled contentedly. He greeted Juliana. He sat by the window and said that the weather was wonderful today. I asked how she slept. He complimented her that she was even more beautiful in the light. The girl was a little shy and timid, and he continued that such a woman would be highly valued everywhere. And I considered this a sign that everything would work out for her. The guy said that Grandma woke up and wanted to meet her. The girl felt hot and flushed. Paula Barenhag. If the girl's memory did not deceive her, then while still a princess, she heard about a weak-looking lady who was indifferent to power. However, instead of her husband, who died early on the battlefield, she managed to protect her family with her sharp mind. And now the blonde doubted that she could deceive her with such a cheap trick. But she also understood that if she didn't succeed, this man would not leave her so easily. And now she didn't even know what to do. The maid was carrying 2 suitcases and a chest. She shouted to Miss Juliana that she had brought her dresses. Having put down the heavy burden, Balin bowed to greet Mr. Stefan. She quickly walked up to the chest and, opening it, said that yellow would suit Juliana, lifting her finger on the edge of one of the dresses. The maid apologized for keeping Mr. Stefan waiting for a long time. She reported that she had already finished decorating Miss Juliana. A blonde woman in a chic yellow dress came out from behind the screen. No, she swam out like a swan. She wore pearl beads around her neck and her hair was decorated with yellow decorative flowers. The guy complained that they were making his grandmother wait. He urged me to go to her quickly. They walked down a long corridor. Their steps echoed loudly under the high arch. Stefan confidently opened one of the rooms. The door creaked quietly. A girl came in after him. The guy knocked on another door. He told his grandmother that he had brought Juliana and she was already here. Our heroine sadly thought that she would die as soon as Juliana's grandmother realized that she was lying to her. But she understood that she would also die if everything did not go according to plan, and Stefan would get angry. She believed that it would be better if she ran away then. After all, escape was no longer possible now. The guy ordered her to come in. Our heroine's body began to tremble. Stefan asked her in a whisper to avoid any nonsense just in case. There was silence in the room. The woman was sitting in bed with pillows under her back. She was aged, thin, and sickly. The girl was struck by her appearance, but she soon got over her excitement and, bowing politely, wished her good morning. Stefan summed up that, as he said, he found Juliana. The lady sharply asked him where exactly he found her. He answered that in one miserable hut of the Duchy of Estur, near the forest of Manhwa-Hub, where she disappeared. The lady asked again. The guy continued to say that the old woman who lived there picked up Juliana and raised her until now. But unfortunately, 3 years ago, she died, and now the girl was on her own. The girl thought to herself that this was a blatant lie. And the meeting place and the person who sheltered her and the place where she lived, everything was fiction. The lady trembled a little. She clenched her clothes with her fingers, seeking support for her bony hand, and she addressed the girl by name. The girl heard a dry, dying voice that did not express anything. Grief after the loss of a loved one is the same for everyone, and it made a woman lose weight so much that she was stronger than many. Our heroine began to mumble something, but Stefan interrupted her. He assured the woman that unfortunately the girl fell from a cliff and lost her memories. So right now she couldn't remember anything. However, being in her native walls, her memory will gradually return to her, and he assured that he would be there to help her. The lady asked the guy to leave. He shuddered involuntarily, but then he controlled himself and bowed to the girl and asked her to talk to her grandmother. When Stefan left, the woman stood up to the bed. She asked the young lady to come closer to her and look into her eyes. She quickly approached. Paula observed the girl's timidity and shyness. She was also surprised by her performance. She was surprised that she was very similar to Juliana. The girl did not understand that if she was not Juliana, then how could she be like her? And she asked what it meant. The lady sat down and asked her to come even closer. The woman asked what the girl's favorite food was. The blonde hesitated. She thought that perhaps her grandmother remembers what food Juliana loved as a child, and she thought that even if disclosure endangers her life, she still didn't want to deceive her by damaging the memories of her granddaughter. The girl said that she liked fruit pie, and she actually liked this kind of baking since childhood. She decided that she no longer wanted to lie to this woman. Paula asked if the girl had any scars that she could remember. The girl denied this. The lady chuckled contentedly. She admitted that so much time had passed that she herself did not remember whether there were any scars. It even embarrassed her. The real Juliana has gone missing. And if this was so, then why did this person appear here? She got up from the table, rattling the dishes. The blonde couldn't find anything to say. Paula voiced that she doubted that the girl was her granddaughter. However, I thought that it would be nice to watch her, since it was God's will, and she advised the girl to gain strength. For a whole week, our heroine lived as if locked up, because she needed to rest to restore her overall health and heal her skin. A doctor came to see her. After examination, he said that it was infectious dermatitis, and he advised spending more time in the fresh air so that it would go away faster. The maid thanked heaven, and she asked if the lady would go for a walk today. The girl submitted to necessity. Soon our heroine was walking in the garden under the open day sun as the doctor advised her. She was invariably accompanied by a maid. At some point, Belen told the lady that they were already there. They were on the shore of Lake Barenhag. The water surface sparkled, and it even seemed like you could see a rainbow. The girl walked down the steps to the shore. She told herself that if heaven existed, it would be here. A black butterfly fluttered not far from her. Only a butterfly with a bright color can protect itself by masquerading as flowers and trees, and the black color was very noticeable. The girl extended her finger and the insect landed on it. She thought that this creature looked like her, and she wished that butterfly to live longer. She advised me not to get caught and get eaten. But then the blonde heard a strange sound and shuddered. The insect immediately flew away. She asked the maid what it was. She replied that perhaps the gates of the estate had been opened. The blonde lost her balance and fell into the water. The girl sank deeper and deeper into the water. The dress became wet and pulled her to the bottom, releasing air bubbles from its countless folds. Our heroine could not reach the bottom with her feet. She was cold and short of air. She already thought that this would really be the end for her. The maid on the shore, moving away from her stupor, began to scream loudly, calling for someone to come to her aid. A man on a horse was rushing from the gate. He managed to see bubbles in the water where the girl dived, and he immediately dived in. There was a splash. Soon a completely wet girl was sitting on the shore. From fighting for her life underwater, her strength left her. A kneeling man sat next to her. The maid fussed around the mistress, asking if she was okay. The girl coughed up water, nodding positively in response. Having caught her breath, she thanked the man for saving her. She was trembling all over from cold and fear. He answered, smiling, that words of gratitude were not worth it. I thought that the main thing was that the girl was safe. He saw the silent question in the blonde's eyes and apologized for delaying the presentation. He put his hand on his chest and said that he was the first commander of St. Johannes's detachment, and his name was Quentin. The blonde took advantage of the maid's help, and a man rode up to them on a horse in armor and with traces of blood on his face and clothes. The girl smelled blood from a distance. The knight who saved her straightened up to his full height at the sight of the general. The maid timidly hid behind her mistress. The girl asked forgiveness for the inconvenience caused and asked permission to take her leave. The man asked the name. The girl shuddered all over. He repeated his question. She answered Juliana. The knight glanced sideways at her. He was surprised by the appearance of his younger sister, who had disappeared in childhood. Even on the battlefield, rumors of her return spread. The man pulled the glove off his hand with his teeth. He grabbed the blonde's face and looked into her eyes. She involuntarily hiccuped in fear. The man had black eyelashes and large almond-shaped eyes. His gaze was tired and piercing. According to Stefan, the girl should have known about her brother in advance. Bjarne Barenhag had enormous power and impeccable authority. However, he served God and was faithful to the temple, and therefore kept the beauties at a distance. And that man also killed in the name of God and smelled of blood. And even if half of his face was covered in blood, he was handsome. He addressed the girl by name. She recoiled, but she admitted to herself that she couldn't take her eyes off him. That same black butterfly flew in and began to circle and flutter around the head of the bloody man. Our heroine clutched the hem of her dress. She couldn't understand why her heart ached and fluttered so much. The man in the blue cloak ordered to return, and he himself was the first to climb on his horse and set off at a gallop. The girl herself did not understand how for a moment she succumbed to vain expectations. With such a cruel and strong person, she could gain strength that would help her take revenge on the Terralucci family, who deprived her of everything. And she felt unwell again. 2 other maids ran up and began to fuss, asking how she was feeling. She assured them that everything was fine, and she announced her desire to return to her room. Soon the girl was already leaving along the garden path, led into the house by caring maids. The knight did not know whether it was worth talking about this, but he considered the girl truly beautiful, and he was sure that she would soon be inundated with marriage proposals. He said her eyes were red. The girl did not understand why he mentioned her eyes, and she cautiously suggested that the real Juliana might have had a different eye color. But the man said that her eyes were simply charming and grinned contentedly. The girl was on the bed. The maid was surprised that the mistress took a bath alone. She said that today was a hard day and her help would be useful. But the blonde thanked her and said that she was used to taking a bath herself, that it was more convenient for her. The maid asked if the lady was aware that Mr. Stefan would come today. She said that it seemed that there were some problems in his marquise, but he had to return soon, and there was not much time left. She hinted at the need for the lady to make a decision before arriving. Our heroine decided that then she needed to get dressed quickly. He will definitely come soon, spurred on by the news of the return of Archduke Barenhag to protect the false Juliana. Soon the blonde was dressed in a chic red dress and was waiting sitting on a luxurious soft chair. The door swung open. The red-haired guy joyfully greeted Juliana from the doorway. The maid congratulated Marquis Stefan on his successful and speedy return, making him a graceful curtsy. He asked the servant to leave them alone, following her with his eyes to the door. There was silence. The guy looked at the girl, which greatly embarrassed her. Finally, he broke the silence, saying that she had become prettier. She replied that this place was better than where she had been before. He replied that this undoubtedly pleased him. The blonde said that she had met with His Highness. The guy smiled and said that he had already heard this news. The girl sadly reported that it seemed to her that he was not particularly happy to see her. He insisted that dogs are always wary of strangers, and His Highness Bayanut was the most ferocious of dogs. Our heroine could not understand how Marquis Stefan could talk about Archduke Barenhag like that. She timidly reported that he paid attention to her eye color, and I wondered what color Juliana's eyes were. The red-haired man narrowed his eyes and glared at the girl. She trembled all over from his gaze. Stefan said quietly that in the dark her eyes seemed brown to him then. He himself was at a loss. He scratched the back of his head thinking. But then he said that it was not scary, and he promised the girl that everything would be okay. He said, as if to himself, that when Bionut was 3 years old, he grew up under the wing of an archbishop in another district. Then the brother was not so close to Juliana. After all, for him, Stefan, she was like a sister. He said that they would not doubt her if he vouched for her. But he also advised the girl to avoid Bionut. She didn't understand how realistic it was to avoid the owner of this place. After all, the Archduke in his own lands was none other than the king. The girl lowered her eyes to the floor and said that no matter how much she wanted, she could not avoid His Highness. Stefan said with folded hands that she couldn't avoid him either. Our heroine couldn't find anything to say to him. She knew Stefan was right, and if she ultimately abandoned the idea, he could kill her at any moment in a fit of rage. She understood that for aristocrats it was in the order of things to kill a maid who spilled tea on her mistress's favorite dress. And therefore, on the contrary, she should be grateful that Stefan has behaved with dignity so far. The guy opened the medallion, looking at it carefully. The guy said that he had already introduced her to her mother and there was no turning back for them. That from now on she was Juliana, that she lived with an old woman in a hut in the middle of the Ortis forest. He said that he would like my mother to get better. After all, for him this was above all. The guy said that after Juliana disappeared, she did not leave her chambers and often skipped meals. And since she was already at an advanced age, her death was only a matter of time. However, according to him, with the appearance of the girl, she began to eat and drink little by little. And he announced what they would do with her. He asked her to prove that she was the real Juliana, and then they would find her a suitable match and marry her off successfully. Our heroine closed her eyes and thought. Whatever it was, deceiving others was not always a bad thing, but she understood that if the truth were revealed, it would only get worse. The girl told Stefan that she was not sure about this idea of theirs. He clarified that she said something about the Barenhag sanctuary, and he promised that if she behaved properly, he would take her there. The blonde screamed furiously that then he should take her there first. The redhead found her outburst of emotions funny. There was a knock on their door. Both flinched at the sound. The girl wondered. The door opened and the maid Beline appeared in the doorway. She apologized for interrupting them, and she informed the miss that the lady wanted to see her. Stefan told the girl to go quickly. As parting words, he told her, pushing her, that if she played her role poorly, everything would end for her and for him. Our heroine walked along the corridor, accompanied by a maid, gently clicking her heels. What bothered her was the way her grandmother looked at her the last time, and it seemed to her that she did not believe in the return of her granddaughter. Valen bowed to the lady, saying that she had brought the miss to her as she had ordered, and the blonde still wasn't sure that she was ready for a new meeting. The older lady was wearing a chic green dress. She allowed me to enter her. She said it was just time for tea, and she asked me to bring fruit pie for dessert. Soon, with the help of the servant, there were tea-drinking utensils on the small tea table. The white porcelain clinked gently. A raven was flying outside the window. Through the closed windows with bars, the girl saw several feathers falling from him. The lady was sipping a hot drink from a cup. She said that she had been in bed for 5 years, but the other day she had an unexpected desire to go outside. She said that judging by the girl's face, she understands what the conversation is about. After all, life in a forest hut was not easy. And smiling, she asked if she had already met Bionut. The girl confirmed her meeting with her brother. The lady asked the young lady whether her brother recognized her. She answered briefly, no. And she thought that he didn't really recognize her, but seemed to suspect something because of her eye color. The girl said that due to the lack of memories, she also did not greet him properly. Paula shook her head, sighing. She said that a small banquet would be held this evening in honor of the return of His Highness the Archduke unharmed. She said that, of course, relatives of their family were invited. With a smile, she said that the Duke of Arthur and his wife, the Marquis of Vaillant, and his wife and other guests would be there. The lady assured that Juliana should also congratulate her brother on his return. The blonde answered sadly, yes, Grandma. In the evening, already dark, the carriages of noble relatives drove up to the palace. Our heroine was sitting already dressed in an elegant dress in yellow tones. Belen powdered and blushed the girl. She assured the lady that she was very beautiful, and the guests today would be simply enchanted by her. The maid was holding a box of cosmetics in her hand. Her hands were shaking. She admired the girl's skin. It was so smooth and shiny. The girl turned to Balin. She shuddered, and stuttering, she asked the lady to look at herself in the mirror. Our heroine looked at her reflection. She blushed all over, and she told the maid that she had simply golden hands. The maid could not understand why the girl's hands began to tremble. Balin assured the girl that she was simply charming, that she has such light hair and skin, even from a distance her face will shine with beauty. The maid said that until now only His Highness was shining. The girl was surprised. There was a knock on the door. The blonde allowed me to enter. The woman came in and wished Miss Juliana good evening. Both girls were surprised. The woman who came in, smiling, said that this was their first meeting. She introduced herself by the name of Laurel, insisting that she was the head maid. She complimented him, assuring that Miss is even more beautiful than people say about her. The blonde was embarrassed by the praise. Laurel, continuing to smile, assured that the mistress would certainly be pleased. She said that the banquet would begin soon, and she came to accompany her. She called me to follow her. In the huge hall, 2 long tables stood against the walls. People chatted and laughed happily. The servants stood ready. The door creaked, and a gorgeous blonde in a luxurious dress but with a sad face appeared on the threshold. Her heart quickened its rhythm. All eyes were on her. Our heroine even staggered but controlled herself. Sweat began to drip from her from nervous tension. She curtsied deeply as a greeting, telling myself that I should rather sit in the corner. The Archerzog sat in the place of honor as the host of the banquet. He rested his head on his fist. His heart also suddenly trembled for something. The girl, staggering, told herself that she needed to go and not attract much attention to herself. And she couldn't understand why he was looking at her so intently. She assumed that the man was looking for other differences from Juliana, whom he at least somehow remembered from childhood. Suddenly, the Archduke addressed Juliana by name. She answered her brother's call. Her heart did a somersault and her whole body trembled, and she didn't wonder why he called her. The man imperiously and unequivocally pointed his finger at a place on the chair. He asked her to sit at the table next to him on his left hand. Soon the blonde timidly took the seat next to the Archduke. After a short time, Madame Paula came to the banquet hall. She was wearing a black and red dress, and her fair-haired head was decorated with a small hat. The guests began to greet Madame one by one. She assured that they were really looking forward to meeting her. They expressed joy at her arrival. The lady, smiling, authoritatively waved her hand at them as a sign of acceptance of their greeting. Paula announced the start of the reception. The guests applauded in unison. Our heroine tried to contain her excitement and involuntary convulsive sighs. She tried not to pay attention to Bionut, who was sitting next to her. Tat, in turn, did not particularly impose his company on her. Paula turned to His Highness with a smile. She raised her glass to him, winking slyly, saying that his safe return was happiness for everyone. The woman suggested that Bionita be told to raise a toast to everyone who came here for him. He agreed and stood up heavily, rattling his chair. The Archduke said that he was glad to see everyone today, and he expressed the hope of seeing everyone in good health again at the next banquet. The men drank to the dregs, and the ladies laughed and clapped in support of the toast. He thanked them for coming and announced that it was time to distribute gifts. Stefan also took a sip from his glass of wine. A basket with a couple of puppies was placed on the carpet. It was said that a few days ago these puppies entered the royal palace, that this is a very rare breed, and there are almost no such ones abroad. They were reported to be excellent companions, and their high body temperature meant that they could be used to warm your hands in cold weather. The girl thought they were wonderful. Previously, she had only seen hunting ones. The Archduke was wondering what to do with this gift. Everyone was waiting for his decisive word. He reached into the basket and took one of the white lumps. The blonde awaited his actions with trepidation. Bionut approached her and handed her a snow-white puppy. The girl looked at him with wide eyes in surprise. The Archduke said that this animal suits her. The girl, stuttering a little, thanked him for the gift and compliment, hugging the puppy to her chest. Paula, smiling slyly, agreed with His Highness that the girl and the snow-white dog looked good together. Bionut told Miss that it was true, that this puppy suited her. I asked her to accept congratulations. The blonde was sitting with a snow-white animal in her arms. Balin let out screams of delight as she fussed around her and called the puppy cute. The girl felt the warmth of the small, fluffy body. The maid felt awkward. But I finally decided to ask if the lady had already come up with a name for the puppy. The animal whined softly. The blonde understood that this puppy was a gift for the real Juliana. She asked herself if she really could give him a name. Then she drove these thoughts away from herself. Having said that all this is nonsense and she was in no position to experience something like that. After all, she didn't even know how long she would last in this castle. And she began to think about what to call him. She lifted him under her paws and began to carefully observe, examining him. The animal yapped. The girl released the maid. She said that it was time to sleep and she could go and rest too. She bowed, wishing good night. Soon the door slammed behind her, and our heroine went and sat on the windowsill. Looking out into the night landscape, the night gust of wind blew her hair. At that moment she had an unbearable desire to sing. She closed her eyes and began. At night, when even the birds sleep, plant a seed in the cradle, and let it bloom in sweet praise. Having circled the moon, you will find eternal peace. She sang this lullaby when she was locked in the tower after the mutiny, for the father and his soldiers who died due to the betrayal of the Terralucci family. But then she saw a male figure below in the garden under the windows, and looking more closely, I recognized Benuta with her. Her heartbeat immediately increased. The girl slid from the windowsill down to the floor in the hope that she would not be noticed at the window. She covered her mouth with her hand, not knowing how long she had been watched from below from the yard. She asked herself if he had heard her sing, and she was embarrassed whether she had disturbed him too much. She began to carefully look out the window. The man below continued to stand. Our heroine slid to the floor and pressed herself against the wall. She wondered why he was here now. The girl sat hidden in the room, and the Archduke stood with his head raised and peering out the window. The blonde was trembling. She heard footsteps outside her window. When the sounds from outside stopped, she thought that the man had already left and sighed with relief. The girl went to bed. In her sleep, she twisted and muttered something quietly to herself, fiddling with the edge of the blanket. She dreamed of how she was a little girl sitting in a tower. Then she prayed, asking that the Pope's troops may win. There were only bare walls around her. But suddenly her skin began to change color. The girl looked at her leg. She told herself that he was here again. This wolf cub always came at dawn. The girl sat down and began to sing a song. It seemed as if the melody was pouring straight from her heart. The animal looked at her with blue eyes. And then he turned into a beautiful blue-eyed boy. Morning has already arrived over the castle. The birds chirped happily, welcoming the new day. Meanwhile, the maid helped put on the girl's dress. She was just lacing it up at the back. The fidgeting of the hem attracted the puppy, and he cheerfully attacked and barked at its rustling hem. Both girls admired the cute animal. The maid asked Miss what he could be called. The white and very fluffy little animal was simply adorable, and his black eyes looked like buttons, and that made him seem almost like a toy. Just like yesterday, the girl did not want to give the animal a name, and yet it was necessary to name him something in order to teach him to respond over time. The baby was sitting in her arms. "Tia," she said to the puppy. The servant asked again, and the girl explained to her that in translation this name meant soft and fragile, because she was still a small puppy. Phelan quietly told Miss that she had changed a lot. She saw how she became more relaxed and sometimes even smiled. The blonde was stroking the puppy's back. She asked what the maid was talking about, not understanding what she was hinting at. Phelan asked to forgive her for her bad manners, regretting that she allowed herself to say something stupid. She bent down to pick up a fallen bow from the floor. The mistress saw this awkward movement of the maid, and her heart began to beat faster. Phelan told her that the head maid would come soon, and she assured that since Juliana was gradually getting better. Then Madame asked to officially show her the entire castle. Soon the door creaked and Laurel appeared on the threshold. She smiled and expressed the hope that the lady slept well. She assured me that today she was just as beautiful. The girl wished good morning to the head maid. She said that today she would show her the castle, and starting tomorrow, homeschooling will begin for her. Lorea announced that the girl will study culture, etiquette, religion lessons, and much more. She was sure that she would definitely like it all. And she offered to start. Under the arch of the castle, the clicking of women's heels could be heard. Our heroine, accompanied by the head maid, walked up the steps. The hems of the dresses trailed along the blue carpet. Laurel led the mistress to one of the paintings on the wall. He reported that it was the previous Archduke, Waldemar Barenhag. The man in the image was handsome and arrogant. The maid continued to give the tour. She said that there was a portrait of the current Archduke hanging nearby. The blonde looked at the framed images of people with interest, finding similarities in them. Laurel said there were busts of the Barenhag family on the first floor of the outbuilding, and the place next to His Highness is now free. But soon it will be occupied by a statue of Juliana herself. The maid reported that the second floor was used by His Highness, and the far room itself, right along the corridor, was his personal chambers, and right next to them was a warehouse. She reported that His Highness had a collection. The blonde thought that for some reason, looking at this man, it seemed to her that he could only collect the heads of animals or even people. But then she suddenly suggested that the Archduke might well have statues of saints there. Laurel reported that His Highness personally takes care of his collection because no one is allowed to enter the warehouse. Even she herself had never been there. The blonde was very surprised. But what the maid said, laughing, was that it was not easy for simple people like her to even see His Highness. In 20 years of work, she had never heard his voice. The senior governess said that His Highness was interested in painting, and she once saw how His Highness's servants mixed paints and made brushes. Our heroine thought. She thought to herself that the Archduke painted pictures with such a large body. I didn't think it was suitable at all. Laurel told Miss she did a good job today. She asked if she liked the tour of the castle. When the girl opened the door with a creak, they saw Mr. Stefan sitting on the sofa. He had a puppy in his arms. He played nicely with him. Our heroine shuddered all over. The guy called the puppy cute and asked if the girl had already come up with a name for him. Laurel bowed and asked permission to leave. The guy nodded silently in response. Soon she walked away, her heels clicking. The blonde replied that she named the puppy Tia. Stefan rubbed his nose against the dog's nose and said to her in a small voice, "Hi, Tia." He told Tia that something terrible had happened, that Bionut suspected his little sister and sent people to check. The guy gently scratched the puppy's head and sat in a relaxed position. Stefan said that they were looking for the coachman who helped him that day, and the woman who came up with her name was found murdered. He asked what she thought about this. The girl reeled from such news, and from the composure of Stefan with which he spoke as if about an ordinary event. She held on to the curtain, trembling, and she asked if he was telling her the truth. The guy stood up and approached the girl. He put his hand on her shoulder. Looking into her eyes, he said that she was beautiful, and he assured that any man would think so. But he believed that this, however, was not enough to charm Bionut. The girl said that she remembered his verdict that she did not have such abilities. The guy said that he could only be attracted to a saint from the Holy Scriptures, and he believed that if he doubted it, it was only a matter of time before it was discovered. The blonde swallowed nervously, and Stefan showed her the throat-cutting gesture. The girl knelt down and breathed quickly. He said that rather than catch her like that, she asked him to better return her to where she was before. But the guy assured her that even if he let her go, he would have to find and kill her. He assumed that perhaps he would tear her apart alive and throw her to the beasts. At these words, the guy was absolutely calm and even smiled. The girl was surprised how it was possible to say such terrible words, draw such terrible pictures, and at the same time smile serenely. She realized that he was confident in himself. After all, in case of failure, all the charges will fall on the fake Juliana, and he will be innocent of what happened. Stefan said that there was good news, however. At these words, hope lit up in the girl's eyes. The guy reported that the coachman who brought her here from the brothel had gone on a voyage far, far across the sea, and he reminded her of what he had said before, that she could only play her role well and pray for her grandmother's health. The guy turned his back and walked busily around the room. He said that Mrs. Paula's health was important to Bionut. He said that politics and war were the lot of men. However, this house was important and needed a wise mistress. After all, no one wanted such a capable woman to end her life like this. She saw right through the struggle of wives to maintain the power of the clan, and there was a sound grain in this. The girl muttered and asked Stefan what he suggested she do. After a significant pause, he turned around and walked straight towards her. He squeezed her, took her chin, and looked into her eyes for a long time. He asked if she was ready to try. The blonde just silently turned away from him. He said that it was not necessary to answer. Stefan turned his back to her and was now looking out the window. He said that if she found it strange and decided to run away, then she would probably lose her head. She also reminded that this could also affect the prostitutes with whom she lived. Sunset was approaching, painting the sky in warm colors. The silhouettes of the trees began to turn black. Crows flew outside the window, emitting a characteristic caw, and our heroine was sitting on the floor, resting her head on the edge of the bed. She cried and told herself that she couldn't do this anymore. Tears rolled uncontrollably down her cheeks in large drops, and she sobbed convulsively. Later, the girl sat on the edge of the bed. Nearby on the blanket, the puppy Tia was fast asleep with his paws outstretched. The awkward movements woke the animal, and it immediately jumped up and began barking and whining. The blonde took the puppy in her arms and began to caress him. She asked if she wanted to go for a little walk in the garden, and he counted another tiaf for yes. She was soon running, hurrying along the castle corridor, clutching the animal tightly to her chest. She wondered why the Archduke had suddenly decided to give her Tia. It didn't seem like a sudden whim, because he wasn't one of those who gave in to whims so easily. Having already gone out into the street, the girl went down the steps with the puppy in her arms into the garden. She reflected on what kind of person the Archduke was. The animal deftly jumped from the mistress's arms to the ground and barked cheerfully. The girl shuddered and rushed after the puppy, but she loudly called his name. But his fluffy tail quickly disappeared into the nearby bushes, rustling the leaves. The girl gave the command, "Come to me," but Tia did not appear before our eyes. The puppy's owner looked around in the hope that the animal was about to show up. The blonde was upset and wondering what she should do. After all, it could soon get completely dark and she would lose her Tia here. Suddenly she heard a rustling sound and perked up with the hope that it was her puppy, and she began to peer even more carefully in the direction where the rustling was heard. The Archduke was sitting lounging on a carved bench. He crossed his legs, enthusiastically reading a book with a red cover. Seeing the girl, the Archduke's servant greeted her, surprised by her sudden appearance and bowing slightly to her. And she looked completely confused. The guy was glad that she also went for a walk, and in his hands he held a white puppy. The girl hurriedly went to him to pick up the animal. The servant insisted that the puppy appeared out of nowhere. He sat Tia down on the path and invited her to go to her owner. The girl made a graceful curtsy, bowing. She asked the Archduke for forgiveness for daring to interfere with his rest. Fanut was silent. The blonde muttered sadly that it was boring to sit in the room. The puppy tugged at the Archduke's boot. There was the sound of a clasp clanking. Bionnet slammed the book he had just been reading enthusiastically. He briefly said, "Hello." The blonde flinched in surprise. She answered him, "Hello, brother." This was the first time the Archduke addressed a girl so informally, and Stefan told her that Bionnet doubted her. The wind blew her hair and the hem of her dress. He saw open, non-healing ulcers on the skin of her legs, and he asked her to come closer. The girl shrank from the cold. She began fiddling with her hands nervously. The Archduke motioned her to a place next to her on the bench. She sat down quietly and obediently. Behanot opened the book again and continued reading it in complete silence. The red-haired servant told Miss that it had become quite cool outside in the evening, and he asked if she was cold. She noted to herself that it was really cold, but she feels warm with the puppy given by His Highness. Meanwhile, the animal barked fervently at the careless butterfly. The guy noticed that the girl couldn't take her eyes off the butterfly last time either, and he was surprised that she liked them so much. She remembered the incident on the lake and briefly answered him, yes. This was not surprising to him. After all, the girl was the sister of the Archduke, and His Highness also loved butterflies. The girl's gaze slid over the silhouette of Bionnet, who was already engrossed in a book. A butterfly sat on his shoulder and another fluttered nearby. Then she thought to herself that since the Archduke liked such small creatures as butterflies, then perhaps he was more human than she initially assumed. And he suddenly grabbed her by the face. The girl assumed with horror that he wanted to check her eye color in this way. At that moment, she wanted to run away even if she had to break free. But I didn't know what would happen if she suddenly took off. She thought that it would be nice if she had eyes the color of Juliana. Meanwhile, the Archduke was looking closely at her face. When he let go of her chin, he said that her eyes were a very beautiful color. The servant laughingly assured that he thought so too, that her eyes were beautiful like precious stones. Ferhanut supported the remark, and he said that it was so true that he just wanted to collect them. But his grin gave the girl goosebumps. The frightened young lady presented the Archduke's chest of jewelry, and in the midst of a scattering of stones and pearls, 2 human eyes. This fantasy made her even more scared. She swallowed with difficulty the lump that had risen in her throat. But Behanut had already lost interest in it and continued to spend time reading the book. Without taking his eyes off the pages, he said that he heard her sing a song yesterday. The blonde was mentally surprised that he heard the Grandian lullaby that she sang yesterday. On the path, a puppy was barking merrily, and then he started running to catch up with the butterfly. The puppy's barking scared away the fragile insect, and it quickly flew away to the cotton flowers that grew nearby. The girl said that it was time for her and Tia to go back, and she asked His Highness for forgiveness for the inconvenience. The blonde deftly picked up the restless puppy in her arms and walked away from the garden, rustling the hem of her dress along the path. The Archduke looked after her for a long time, interrupting his reading of his book. He slammed the book shut, and he voiced that, in his opinion, Tia was a rather strange name for a puppy. The girl entered the room and laid the tired beast on the bed. He immediately fell asleep sweetly, and the girl was thinking, suddenly remembering those flowers in the garden. She recalled to herself that when she was still a princess, she definitely saw them during her trip to the southern lands. They looked a lot like cotton flowers. As a girl, she was walking on a sunny day under an umbrella. But when she reached out her hand to touch the fluffy flower with her finger, her mother immediately grabbed her in her arms and hugged her tightly. The umbrella was torn from my hands by the wind and carried away. The woman gently but sternly told her daughter that these flowers could not be touched, that they are very dangerous and poisonous. The girl staggered along the path to the den with a heavy bucket, alternately shifting it into one hand and then into the other. At some point, she heard crying. 3 women sat in a group and sniffled. One of them asked about Sister Adrian. Another said that if only she had that white cotton-like flower that bloomed at the entrance. If she had boiled it for a long time with wolfsbane root and rum, she would have gotten poison. She knew that that poison brought painful death. It corroded internal organs, and those who took it died, choking on their own blood. And if she had this poison, she could escape from here. Laurel walked along the corridor of the castle, humming a melody cheerfully and quite melodiously. She opened the door, smiling and creaking, cheerfully wishing the lady good morning. The girl sat without a mood. In response, he habitually wished good morning to the maid. She looked quite pale and sickly. The maid realized that Miss looked so bad. She was worried that she might be unwell, but the girl said that everything was fine. And she explained that today she just didn't get enough sleep. All night she was tormented by a nightmare in which she was pursued by some black silhouette. She thought that she had dreamed something like this before, when she was locked in the tower and in the den. Laurel was checking to see if the lady was okay. After all, her classes started today, but she believed that if she felt bad, then she could reschedule them until tomorrow. The girl thought about her classes. She doubted whether they had any meaning. It was more for Grandma and Stefan, and it was only a matter of time before they discovered where it came from. The blonde assured that everything was fine with her and she could study. The maid was happy about this. She also conveyed the words of Mrs. Paula that she was offering to have breakfast with her. A noble lady asked the girl how she liked the food on the table. She modestly replied that everything was delicious. The maid told Mrs. Paula that she had brought the pie on her orders. The fresh pastries looked very appetizing. The golden brown crust and braided top made it look simply divine. The girl swallowed her saliva at the sight of him. The woman said that the girl had not forgotten etiquette, and looking at this pie, she remembered that she liked it so much as a child that after that she only ate it for dessert. She said that the day she left her. Then she invited the duchesses to the entrance to the forest of Manhwa-Hub for a hunt. The ladies chatted happily. They laughed and laughed heartily at each other's jokes and barbs. The event was a networking event, and the main prize was a foal. At that time, Paula clearly felt how she was aging day by day. Therefore, the woman wanted to show them that she was still in good health. And I wanted it to always be like this. She took the crossbow with a skillful hand and pulled its mechanism. Everything worked out for her, and a characteristic click was heard. Then she was provoked by thoughts of winning over young girls, and Paula, riding a noble horse, rushed off into the forest. She was worried that her granddaughter might follow her, so she left the girl with nannies. When the Duchess returned with the carcasses of 2 deer, the child was no longer there. The nannies ran and called Juliana, but they could not find her anywhere. Then Paula realized the seriousness of her mistake. The nannies, and then everyone else who could, looked for the missing child in the forest. But the mistake Paula made turned out to be irreparable. She blamed herself for putting personal goals above safety. The Duchess told the girl that she had heard that her classes were starting today. She asked her to try hard, and if she needs anything, don't hesitate to ask her. The girl promised her grandmother to do everything just like that. She also praised the pie, and she shared her impressions, as if it was the first time she had eaten something so delicious. She insisted that she would like to make one request to her grandmother, and she voiced that she would really like to see the Manhwa-Hub sanctuary, that she had heard rumors that it was beautiful there, like heaven. Our heroine wanted to meet Johannes before she was discovered. After all, it didn't look like Stefan was going to take her there as he had previously promised. She also doubted whether her grandmother would agree to this. Paula said that it was apparently God's will that she was found only now, and she agreed to go there with her granddaughter. The girl noticeably cheered up and thanked her grandmother. But then there was a knock on their door. The door swung open. The guy asked for forgiveness and introduced himself that it was him, Stefan. He quickly walked up to Paula, and apologizing for interrupting their tea party, he reported that the teacher was already waiting for Juliana. The woman reproached herself for delaying the child, who already had a lot to do today. Stefan glanced sideways at the girl, and she quickly sank. She quietly said to her grandmother that she had a good time with her and was grateful to her for that. Soon the guy walked in front and the girl trotted behind him. She saw those white cotton flowers blooming even in the courtyard. Stefan told her over his shoulder that she was doing pretty well. The girl asked her to forgive her. She bent down and began to pick flowers. Then she handed the twig to the guy. These flowers could give her her desire, her freedom. Events take us a few weeks later. The girl's legs were bare to the knees and lay on a soft ottoman. The maid said that the mistress's hair became so smooth and shiny. Philin was combing the girl's blonde hair, and she sat sad. The maid asked if the lessons were difficult. The girl shook her head. She said that for her, writing and etiquette were quite acceptable, but the waltz was the worst. When our heroine first met her grandmother, even walking around the room was difficult for the woman. But now her health has improved significantly, and recently they began to walk together in the garden. The girl noticed that her maid Balin also began to smile more often. She, all beaming, told her mistress that she was constantly training, and so her abilities improved noticeably. The maid asked how their walk went yesterday, and have they already gone to the Manhwa-Hub sanctuary? Yesterday, Juliana and her grandmother went out just to meet the sculptor. Then Paula told the girl that among her acquaintances there was a priest whom she had not seen for a very long time. And while she was chatting with him, she suggested that her granddaughter take a walk around the square nearby.
And then the girl went about her business. She began to ask about the person she was interested in, Johannes.
The seller of one of the shops said that he had never heard of this before, and he reported that his cousin had a shop. He could contact him and ask him about this. The girl thanked the man. So she ended up learning nothing about Johannes, and now she was telling her maid about her impressions. She said that it was beautiful there and that it was worth going there again sometime. Phelan asked if they were able to meet the sculptor. She said that there were rumors that he was a real handsome man. The girl thought about the sculptor. She definitely didn't remember his face. After all, while working, she tried to cope with her disappointment. And somehow she didn't notice whether that man was handsome. Sitting on the bed, she thought that she had no other way to find Johannes, and she replied that it seemed the sculptor was handsome. Phelan was happy to hear such words from her mistress. She assumed that compared to His Highness, perhaps other men were not handsome enough for the lady. Our heroine noticed that the servants in the corridor were whispering again. Ever since she had been in this castle, she had noticed something. That all conversation somehow came down to the Archduke. There was no doubt that the words about his enormous strength and abilities were well-founded. And Balin also told the lady all the news about Beanut, that he had just returned to the castle. According to her, the Archduke stayed for a week in the royal palace of Nordbalch, but now His Highness has returned. The girl sadly thought to herself that only thanks to the absence of Beanut in the castle she was able to catch her breath at least a little. Feline said that it looks like His Highness is finally getting married. This news greatly surprised the blonde, and the maid continued to chirp. She claimed that she heard the locals talking, and it looked as if His Majesty was thinking of facilitating his marriage with the eldest princess of the Kingdom of Brint. And she admitted that everyone was very worried that His Highness had not yet been interested in the ladies. He continued to fight, but he had no heir. This was very disturbing. Our heroine thought that aristocrats, like the Archduke or members of the royal family, had enormous responsibilities commensurate with their wealth and power. And one of the few responsibilities was the birth of healthy heirs and continuation of the family. The blonde asked the maid if there was any special reason. He became embarrassed. Feline said that he was very homesick for his fiancée, who disappeared when she was a child. Juliana was surprised that he still remained affectionate. The maid said that she had heard that Princess Brint had crossed the sea and was now studying in an eastern country. It was quite possible that in a month she would finish, and upon her return the wedding would take place. She said that there were rumors about her incredible beauty, that she was able to amaze any man, and she is sure that no matter how beautiful the princess is, the marriage will take place when her heart flutters. The girl thought that if Behanut was going to get married, then a lot of things needed to be prepared, and it was possible that doubts about her identity would recede into the background or disappear altogether. Puppy Tia ran as fast as she could, yelping loudly. Juliana went down the steps. Today she had a drawing lesson. The girl met the teacher and they greeted each other politely and courteously. The man bowed and the girl gave him a graceful curtsy in response. The puppy is already tired. He stretched out his paws and slept snoring right on the floor. The teacher instructed the girl to add some light and shadow. When the girl followed his recommendations, he praised her. He assured her that she was doing well. The girl said that the picture was almost ready, but the still life was not depicted. Apples, grapes, and flowers. Juliana was pleased with herself. She decided that when she finished, she would give it to her grandmother because she knew that she loved apples. The teacher smiled and told Miss Juliana that she had done a good job today. She was pleased to hear praise addressed to her. Our heroine was still finalizing her project. She worked on the background and shadows, and she thought that she had learned something else lately. All the servants and maids of this mansion walked silently, but she clearly heard the sound of footsteps as Stefan approached. And now she also heard footsteps. The door swung open. The Archduke entered and came closer. The teacher, taking off his headdress, greeted His Highness in confusion. He said that it was a great honor for him to meet him. The man reported that he was teaching Miss Juliana to draw. Beanut approached the girl from behind and hovered over her, looking over her shoulder. The girl squeezed the hem of her dress with her hand, coping with her emotions. Then, standing up, she turned to her brother, bowing to him in a graceful curtsy. Having greeted His Majesty, the girl asked him how the trip went. The guy was gloomy. He was surprised that the girl was still here. He assumed one of two things. Either she was fearless or real. The Archduke touched Juliana's blonde hair. The girl asked for forgiveness that even after hearing the news of his return, she could not greet him. Beanut carefully examined the freshly drawn picture of the girl. The teacher said that the lady was very similar to Madame, known in secular circles as an artist. Therefore, she had an amazing sense of aesthetics. He assumed that with practice she would succeed. Behanut said in the girl's ear that the artist meant that she looked like his mother, and now he wanted to believe it. His Highness the Archduke ordered her to paint. The teacher intervened in the conversation between the brother and sister. He assured that the girl did not yet have enough abilities to draw portraits. Behanut firmly said that only he would decide here, and our heroine did not know what to do, and she was going to say that she would practice more and give her a properly drawn portrait. The guy lay down on the sofa. Place your hands comfortably under your head. And then the girl realized that he was unlikely to agree to her proposal. Juliana asked His Highness for forgiveness. She insisted that she was not yet very good with a brush. Therefore, she asked to give her some time. But he only briefly ordered draw. And then the girl realized that she had to choose one of two. Either she will at least try to draw, or she will refuse and then her head will fly off her shoulders. She asked the teacher to inform her uncle about the situation. He left to carry out Juliana's orders. Meanwhile, our heroine took a still life from the easel and exchanged it for a fresh canvas. She told herself to calm down. After all, she learned to draw from the age of 6. Even though she never made a full-fledged portrait, she considered people's eyes beautiful and decorated many canvases with them. Soon the pencil touched the canvas and the magic of drawing began. The Archduke was still lying on the sofa. The girl thought that his eyes were like an ocean where no man had ever set foot. However, that was all. She did not feel the same feelings as warmth, anger, or sadness that the person probably possessed. The girl thought about what kind of Archduke he really was. The one whose body was covered in blood, or the man who talked about his love for butterflies. Behanut lay with his face turned to the side. The girl apologized and said that she couldn't see his eyes. She insisted that in her opinion, this was the most important part of the face. The guy asked why she thought so. The girl hesitated a little. She suddenly remembered how her brother ran away from death and what his eyes looked like when he was mortally wounded. Then she hid under the sofa and could not hold back her tears. She covered her mouth with her hands so as not to give away her location by screaming. After that incident, she believed that a person's eyes were the mirror of his soul. Our heroine realized that she had made a mistake. Behnut looked at her with his eyes as if he was ready to burn right through her. But she could do that too. Our heroine was a deposed princess, a former brothel worker. And now the girl brazenly took someone else's place because she really wanted to live. And nothing could save her shameful soul. There was a knock on the door. The voice introduced itself as Stefan and warned that he would come in now. Juliana was sitting at the easel. She looked over her shoulder at the guy. Behnut at this time moved his body to a sitting position. Stefan smiled at His Highness, and the Archduke, getting up, asked his uncle why he had come here. The red-haired man said that he accidentally met Juliana's art teacher, and he told him that his brother asked her to draw his portrait. He continued his sweet speech. He assured that he did not want to interfere with the good time of his brother and sister. Stefan carefully examined the girl's pencil work on canvas. Juliana was alarmed and did not know what to do now. After all, while drawing, her hands trembled and her head did not work at all. And that's why she was not ready to show this horror on canvas instead of a portrait. Stefan put his hand on the girl's shoulder. He said that he did not know whether Behnut was aware. He informed him that Juliana was now in search of an activity for which she had a predisposition. He said that it had only been a month since her return, so her abilities might still be lacking. Stefan said that His Majesty might be bitter about Juliana's inexperience, and he offered to evaluate her painting in its finished form. But Behnut had already taken the canvas in his hands and turned it towards his face. His expression slowly changed. The girl waited with fear for criticism. The guy said that she was also there in the picture. This left her completely confused. Behnut showed the girl a drawn highlight of yellow in the pupil of an eye in the portrait. Juliana timidly said that she did it unintentionally, explaining that she was so focused while drawing that she conveyed everything she saw without giving it any meaning. Stefan, smiling cheerfully, said that it turned out to be a very unusual portrait. He said that His Highness looked at his younger sister with such a warm gaze. He asked to forgive him, but until now he was depicted in portraits as a stern and cold-blooded ruler. Behnut abruptly and coldly told his uncle that he was very much like his father. Stefan was upset by this and hung his head. The servant who came to them asked forgiveness from His Highness for disturbing him. He said that the gentleman would most likely have to go to the port. Behnut glanced briefly at his uncle, and he was in a hurry to take the girl out of the chambers, and soon they were walking along the corridor. Stefan asked the girl from now on to try to avoid her brother by any means necessary to avoid a repetition of today's incident. She wondered to herself if he was asking too much of her. It seemed like they were in a brothel. There were no other thoughts in her head other than getting out of this mansion as quickly as possible. The guy spoke, looking over his shoulder. It would be nice if she realized the seriousness of the situation and did the right thing. And he believed that she should thank him for getting her out of that dirty den. The girl looked at the floor. The maids were cleaning. Juliana entered. She saw her maid Belen and was very happy with her. Juliana praised the girl that she was in a good mood, and the maid assured that she was very glad to see her mistress. And she asked how successful her meal with Madame Paula was. The blonde answered briefly, "Yes." She noticed a new hairpin on the maid's head and asked when she bought the new thing. Belen answered, smiling, that not long ago Mr. Quentin gave a gift to each of the maids of the mansion, that he said that he met merchants when he went to the port with His Highness. Juliana thought that Quentin must have been a very kind man to give the maids gifts. Belen said that he also told the maids that His Highness had acquired an incredibly expensive thing. And these were earrings with a ruby scarlet like dove's blood. It was said that this gem glowed red like the eyes of a witch. The girl thought that all those words sounded ominous, and Belen said that there is a legend that the once immortal phoenix was reincarnated into a ruby because he was tired of eternal life. Therefore, they said that the owner of a ruby can avoid death. The maid said that the price of the stone was very high, and I assumed that it could be because of that legend. The cost was as much as 20 gold pieces. Belen suggested that it could be a gift for the Princess of Britain, and our heroine thought to herself that for 20 gold pieces she could buy a small mansion. The maid also suggested that perhaps the stone was purchased for His Highness's personal collection. Juliana asked the maid if there was a way to leave the residence without a pass. She answered that she certainly didn't know, but it seemed to her that such a thing was impossible. The girl was led by the arms. It was said that Behanut found out that he was a fake. Therefore, she was no longer of any use. Stefan said he would return her to where she originally was. The girl asked to stop, but then she woke up in her bed, and she nervously clutched the blanket with her hands. Her face was red and her gaze was frightened. In the morning, when the maid saw the mistress, she was horrified by her rumpled and painful appearance. She asked if she was okay. As Stefan continued to treat the girl in this way, she began to have strange dreams. But the maid thought that perhaps it was so difficult for the mistress because of her very busy schedule. Our heroine was thinking about what would be the best answer for her. After all, she could not say how mentally ill she felt at the thought that the truth about her origin might be revealed. Fillion assured that it seemed to her as if His Excellency the Marquis wanted her to make her debut in secular society, and the maids are also concerned that the girl was too busy. Our heroine was surprised, to which the maid said that it was because her marriageable age had already approached. It was known that in secular society the life of a noble lady began with her debut, and a woman could look for benefits among various families, and the debut was her only opportunity to find a mate. And she understood that it was all Stefan's doing. But I didn't understand why he suddenly decided to introduce the impostor to secular society. After all, the more power his false niece gained, the less advantageous his position became. The maid clenched her fists and became tense. Juliana remembered that on the day of their first meeting, for some reason she was also trembling violently, especially her hands. The girl thanked the maid for her care but insisted that she was forced to refuse. After all, it could have affected her too. Villain said with emotion, "Oh, madam," clasping her hands, and was simply delighted, and she said that they were so grateful to her for her changes. The blonde was surprised what changes the maid was talking about, and she immediately stopped short and began to ask for forgiveness. She insisted that she had made a mistake by accident. Juliana said that she had nothing to apologize for, but I asked her to tell me what changes had happened to her. The maid began to tremble all over, clenching her hands into fists. The girl thought that she had just asked a question, but she had not already had such a reaction, and she couldn't understand why she was so afraid. The blonde asked herself what kind of child Juliana was before she disappeared. She took the maid by the hands and asked why she was so afraid. She insisted that she didn't remember anything at all from her childhood. That's why I asked her, assuming that she did something bad as a child. There were tears in Belin's eyes. She covered her face and began to cry, assuring the lady that she had made a slip without realizing it. She begged to forgive her. The mistress told her that everything was okay, calming her down. Juliana said that it would be much better if she told her about what she was like before. What she thought anyway was the reason for her fear. And then Dam told me that as a child Juliana liked to hunt animals, and often her childish face was stained with their blood. For one day a girl found a bitch's litter and beat her puppies to death with a club. Philin said that it was just a rumor, but they said that the girl pushed the maid into the well where she subsequently died. The maids thought that the girl had lost her mother early due to pneumonia, and that's why I felt lost. And Juliana, as a child, mistakenly started a fire in the barn. For this reason, the 5 butlers who were sleeping inside died in the fire. Phelan said that, of course, all the maids believed that these were just accidents. The lady thought that everything turned out to be much more serious than she thought, and she didn't want to believe it. But remembering Baleen on the day of their first meeting or looking at the people of the residence, she had no choice. Juliana now understood why the Archduke gave the puppy, desired by absolutely all aristocrats, to her. It turned out that in this way he wanted to test her. Will her sister returning after her disappearance harm Tia? The girl looked at the serenely sleeping animal. The thought crept into her mind that it might be worth harming Tia and imitating Juliana's behavior in order to dispel the Archduke's doubts. Our heroine went down to the gallery. Just like Bellin said, it was a really calm and quiet place. The girl wanted to pretend to be Juliana, but could not harm the puppy. She sat Tia, to whom she had already become attached, on a softly upholstered bench, and she promised her that from now on there would be no killings, even accidental ones. The maid, bowing, told the mistress that she had said too much and now regrets and apologizes. The blonde said that nothing bad happened. She just had more thoughts. And then Balin suggested taking the lady to a quiet place where she could think calmly. She hoped it would also help change her mood. And now our heroine walked along the plaster statues of the Byronhag family. She had heard that there were plaster statues of his father, the previous Archduke, and his grandmother. The girl asked herself how soon her statue would appear here. She looked with interest at the plaster sculptures and the paintings behind them on the wall. Our heroine noticed to herself that it was, however, very spacious here, and she had the feeling that if she hid well here, she could avoid being seen for a couple of days. She kept walking and looking at the figures, images, frescoes on the ceiling, and at some point she realized that she had not felt such peace for a long time. At that moment she wanted to sing. At night, when even the birds sleep, I nurture the seeds in your cradle so that they bloom with sweet praise. Walking through paradise, rest peacefully in eternity. Even if you can't hear my song, you always live in my heart. The song stopped when Behanut suddenly appeared from behind one of the statues. The girl recoiled in surprise. The guy said he thought it was her.
The blonde was outraged. He thought that she had come here or that she was singing a lullaby.
The Archduke asked her to sing again what she had sung before. The girl was surprised that he knew this song, but it was transmitted orally only in Grandia, and she wondered if the Archduke knew that Grandia was her homeland. She wanted to ask him about it now, seeing his interest in the lullaby. The girl felt as if she was sharing a memory of her childhood with the guy, but she still found the strength to overcome her momentary weakness. And turning away pouting, she said that she didn't understand what they were talking about. The Archduke looked at the girl in such a way that she felt as if he was trying to burn a hole in her. The next day, our heroine, as usual, ate with her grandmother and studied. Everything was as usual, and the last day passed without a trace. The girl tried to understand for herself why Benedict the Archduke was so interested in that lullaby. That family had no enemies. But his reaction yesterday indicated that he had already heard that song somewhere. Phelan asked if the lady slept well. The girl wished the maid good morning and smiled. There was a knock on the door. The girl allowed me to enter. The man who entered wished good morning to the lady. He introduced himself by the name of Bram and explained that he was the steward of His Highness the Archduke. Phelan asked the man what business he came for, and the fake Juliana was wondering why the manager had come here now. The servant said that His Highness had offered to have breakfast with him. Balin asked for forgiveness, assuring that, contrary to all wishes, her mistress was unwell today. But the manager suggested that the lady herself should personally meet with the Archduke and receive an understanding answer from him. Juliana had nothing to say. The man led the girl to a beautiful door with 2 doors with a gilded ornate design. Bram said that the Archduke wished to have breakfast in silence, so he would escort her to his office. He motioned for the girl to come in. Our heroine felt like she was being brought to execution or torture. The manager opened the door and informed His Highness that he had brought Mrs. Juliana. He was just working at the table. The girl asked His Highness for forgiveness. She said that she was not feeling very well today. He coldly ordered her to sit down. The fake Juliana sat down on the sofa opposite the Archduke at the table, lowering her eyes to the floor. He pointed to the table and told her, "Eat." The girl sadly thought that she couldn't even get a bite into her throat. There was something similar to indigestion. Behind Binat, there were 2 portraits on the wall. The image of the man looked exactly like the guy. Nearby was a portrait of a woman who looked like our heroine. The woman was depicted with a sympathetic smile. The girl thought that it was his mother, who left this world due to pneumonia. And the false Juliana thought that that woman must have had a weak body. And the man in the image was the previous Archduke of Barenhag, Waldemath, Behanut's father. The girl thought that she had already seen this portrait in the hall, and she was surprised at how similar she was to the Archduke. And at that moment she sadly thought that portraits of her parents also hung in the Grandia Palace. And the Terralucci family, which had rebelled, was probably now enjoying all the loot from the palace. Behanut said the portrait was the very first. He told her that he would give her another chance. He assured me that her face was quite pretty. Therefore, he will feel sorry for killing. In his hands was a table knife. Behanut said that she could live serving the aristocrats as a mistress, and he thought that it would be better for her to accept this offer. He asked how long she thought he would be nice to her, and he said that, by the way, the coachmen are already leading here. The girl did not immediately understand which coachman Behanut was talking to her about, but then I guessed that it was the one who delivered her from the brothel to the house. The guy assured the girl that he knew about her. The butler touched her shoulder and said that enough was enough. Binat thanked for breakfast. The blonde walked to her room. She asked herself whether they were talking about the coachman who swam across the sea. And how could the Archduke find him? And what will happen to her when he is caught? Felin ran towards the mistress. The girl asked the maid what happened and where she was in such a hurry, and she said that the Marquis was looking for her, that he ordered to urgently bring her right after breakfast. Our heroine thought that Stefan would probably ask her what they were talking about. She wasn't in the mood to talk to him or anyone else right now, but she had nowhere to go. The maid led the girl into one of the rooms. The Marquis stood there smoking a long pipe. As soon as the girl heard the smell of tobacco, she immediately covered her nose with her hand, wrinkling her face from the unpleasant smell. Stefan said he heard talk about her having breakfast with Beanut, and he became curious. She could not or would not avoid the Archduke. He said it would be a shame to waste the skills she had learned by spreading her legs for men. The guy said that the Archduke, unfortunately, was not one of those who was moved by the lower part of the body. The girl was frightened by mistrust in this situation. After all, he really was not a man who could be trusted, and even vice versa. The more he let it in, the greater the poison became. She doubted whether such a person needed to convey information that the Archduke had found the coachman. The girl thought that if she left the estate without really saying anything, would it fall into the hands of the Archduke? But then she began to talk herself out of it, considering that this critical moment had to be overcome first, and she told Stefan that the Archduke said that he would bring the coachman. The guy glanced sideways at the blonde. He clarified whether this was said to her personally. The girl said that it seemed that Beanut at breakfast decided to give her a chance until the coachman was interrogated. She saw the reflections on the Marquis's face, and she assumed that he was going to calculate the Archduke's guesses. Stefan said that if the coachman was captured, he must go through the harbor. In thought, the guy scratched his chin. He said that they would transport him by sea, and he thought that he should have just shot that coachman, and he assured that he would find out everything by sending his reliable person there. Until then, the girl asked to be moved to another more reliable place. Steffa asked her if she thought it was possible to survive differently using her brain. The fake Juliana wondered how she could have acted differently when it came to her life. After all, if His Highness finds out her true face, then her life could end abruptly. But he assured her that this is what her fear would look like if they panicked. The girl thought that it was all because of the puppy. At some point, the smell of tobacco made it difficult for her to breathe. Stefan assured her that mercenaries would be waiting at all ports and borders, so the death of the coachman was only a matter of time. And he assured her that when they got rid of the witness, she would become the real Juliana. He convinced the girl that since he, the uncle, had brought her, the Archduke could not openly reveal his suspicions, and now he ordered her to return to her room. Our heroine realized that during the week she experienced peace only once. Stefan came to her all pale and reported on the progress. He said that the coachman could not be found, and the mercenaries who went to the port disappeared. The girl was thinking about the fate of the mercenaries. She fearfully assumed that when they were going to kill the coachman, the Archduke could kill them. Her head was ready to explode from the imagination of how they would come to kill her. Phelan entered, smiling and wishing the lady good morning. The girl said that she was at the morning service. The blonde invited the maid to come through, and she also greeted Tia, who immediately rushed to meet her. The maid said that she heard that gentleman Paula went out for a walk, and it looked like her condition was improving, so she went to the cemetery. The blonde was surprised, and the maid assured her that she did not know who the mistress was yearning for. But she went there every year at the same time for 2 days and 1 night, and she did it in secret from everyone. Phelan assumed that she wanted to be in peace and therefore asked not to disturb her. The maid said that it was time for teaching, and she offered to escort the young mistress. The teacher of the service suggested that the girl take a break for a while. The blonde just sighed in response. Then the Archduke appeared, and our heroine wondered why he was here, and did you know that she would be here? Beanut approached the impostor with a confident and quick step. His face was gloomy. But then a male voice greeted His Excellency. The girl was alarmed that she had been discovered. Stefan told her that it was not his fault but her own fault. It turned out that a trap had been set. The guy said that initially Behanut could not find the coachman, and instead, the mercenary sent by Stefan found out everything, namely, that he was very seriously interested in her true face. And he wondered why the Archduke used such methods without trying to find out from her personally. Stefan admitted that the Archduke had become more patient with the scent of a real woman, a prostitute from a brothel. The servant Quentin said that His Highness the Archduke called them both together. Quentin had such a tender look at that moment. The girl lowered her eyes to the floor and said, "I obey." Behanut was sitting on the sofa. He folded his hands, his gaze was stern and did not bode well. Quentin accompanied his uncle and girlfriend to the master. He grabbed the girl by the shoulders forcefully, forcing her to her knees. Her hands were on the floor and her hair was falling out in strands. She had the feeling that everything was returning to its place. Men could watch her closely, while she only looked at the dirty floor. Beanut asked if she wanted to say something. Stefan raised his voice. He said that he took Juliana not from the hut, but from a brothel, and so he had no choice but to hide it for the sake of the family's reputation. But he claimed that this child was definitely Juliana. He vouched for it. The Archduke put his sword to the girl's throat. There was horror in her eyes. He ordered her to speak. Drops of scarlet blood dripped onto the floor. The girl was silent and tears flowed down her face. Beanut asked that if she is not Juliana, then who is she? But Stefan intervened. He said that anyone would cry and say anything if you put a sword to their throat. The redhead said that he didn't really want to do it. He only found out about 2 weeks ago that she was not Juliana. And he was extremely impatient in his desire to get his sick mother out of bed. That he already wanted everything to return to its place. But he had only to think about his mother, who would worry even more, and he could not decide on it himself. He said that it was unknown. Maybe her condition would have worsened even more than it was. And our heroine wondered how it was possible to be so shameless and disgusting. She considered him the worst person, having no shame or sense of duty. She decided that she would die anyway. So at least I wanted to expose Stefan's atrocities. But she was worried about the people from the brothel. The guy said that if moral support weakens here, then people will be sad, and it would be natural that the forces that were holding back their family would be eliminated. And the guy assured Beanut that such a calculation would be the end. He said that he entrusted this child with the role of Juliana for the sake of their family. Beanut was surprised that she was a whore, and they were also standing up for her. But Stefan convinced him that she was not greedy. And it was for this reason that she was still here. The red-haired man assured that the girl insisted to the end that she was not Juliana, and our heroine realized that she had miscalculated. And if she had been more greedy, she would have been kicked out before she was exposed. And Stefan insisted that they had better take good care of her, and then marry her to someone from the royal family. And if she suddenly becomes impudent or greedy, they can kill her at any moment. Feyenoord said that the girl turned out to be smarter than he thought, and he ordered that she should no longer come into his sight. He said that the questions were over. The girl thought that it was a miracle that she remained alive, and the Archduke ordered her to stay. Quentin took Stefan by the shoulder and asked the gentleman to go with him. The blonde was on her knees, face down. Feyenoord stood over her. He demanded that she say her name. The girl said that she didn't have one, and in the brothel they called her Maria. After all, Maria was a common name that was found in at least every home. The Archduke asked her how she knew the lullaby. She replied that she once heard her in a brothel. Beanut was simply out of his mind with anger. He grabbed the blonde by the throat, growling furiously as he did so. The thought that this song was sung by whores infuriated him. The girl could not understand why the Benedict's lullaby was so important to him. Could he really not admit the idea that this song could have been learned in such a place? And what did this song mean to him? The Archduke said there was a reason he would let her live. They continued to hold the girl by the throat. She thought that the reason might be that he wanted to deal with Stefan using her. Our heroine, kneeling, raised her head and looked at the Archduke. She told him that she wanted to leave this house. The blonde said that she never wanted to be treated like an aristocrat, but she insisted that there was something she had to do when she got out of here. She said that if His Highness helped her get out of here so that she could live as a commoner, then she would pay for this virtue all her life. She told herself in her mind that she had a job for which she had to live. She was supposed to meet Johannes. He was the only one who found Benedict. Feyenoord summed up her request that she simply wanted to live as a commoner, who had only her own body and nothing else. The girl was lying face down on the floor. She said that she just wanted to live, and that she will be enough even if she can live, struggling with all her might. The guy asked her to raise her head and convince him of her desire to live. She insisted that she absolutely had to find the person. Beanut said he would find it for her, and in return she will do something that there was no need to talk about. He definitely patted his groin and smiled lustfully at her. He said that if she really was of such low birth, it would not cost her anything. There was horror in the blonde's eyes. She lowered her eyes and replied that she could not fall so low. The Archduke was surprised because she had done well so far, and he suggested that she try it. The girl said that it was better for him to kill her. But she herself thought how she wanted to live. I wanted to live for my beloved, also giving love. The girl suddenly remembered her mother's hug. And now she didn't want to die, even cursing Beanut or Stefan. And all because our heroine wanted her face after her last breath to be even more peaceful than during life. She thought that she could do anything as soon as she got out of the brothel. But instead of withering away here day by day, this life was not so important to her. And clutching her dress, she made a choice. The girl asked him to kill her better, but the guy replied that she asked, which was strange, and he assumed that she was too embarrassed. She answered in the affirmative. The Archduke said that he was right about her, so she knew her place, and he briefly thanked her for the conversation, maybe because of an event that was like a storm. But after that day, the girl suffered from severe pain throughout her body for 3 days. And after being ill for several days, she had a dream from her childhood. It's like she's lying on the bare floor of that tower. After the girl saw the headless bodies of her parents, she sang day and night. But 3 days later, she began to experience symptoms of dehydration. And the more the metallic voice emerged from her tattered vocal cords, the more insistently her tears flowed. She wanted to die quickly and be in the arms of her parents. There was a crust of moldy bread on the floor, but the mice were already eating that too. And so several more days passed. The girl lay exhausted on the floor. Suddenly, a bright ray of light began to break through from the window. She watched the stream emanating from there all day. At some moments, when she thought about how desperately she wanted to live, there was only darkness. And now, thinking about the reason why the light came here now, she became curious. She pulled up a chair and, standing on its back at the risk of falling, decided to look out the tiny window. The bright sunlight blinded her eyes, which were already accustomed to semi-darkness. She closed her eyes and covered her eyes with her hand. But then something hit her painfully in the temple. The girl almost fell from her fragile pedestal. Having come to her senses a little, she decided to look out the window again. Below, she saw a boy holding a stone in his hands. The boy was a brunette about her age. His dark blue eyes looked sadly and unfriendly at the girl looking out of the window. He swung with force and threw at her the pebble that he had just held in his hand. The girl pressed her face against the stones of the window. She thought that this time he probably wanted to aim at her face. She quickly got down and sat down with her back pressed against the wall and curled up into a ball. Stones flew near her feet. The stones under her feet made her think that it was the echo of the Terralucci family. She also admitted that she cried a lot, and having lost her family just a few days ago, she should have died too. She gathered all the stones on the floor into her hands. She was suddenly overcome with melancholy. Climbing back out to the window, she began throwing stones at the boy. Soon a hail of stones followed. The girl was in an impregnable dungeon, and he could not harm her in any way. Therefore, she could safely throw stones at him. The boy continued to stand under the window and did not leave. Soon the girl was so exhausted that she fell asleep. Opening her eyes, she realized that she was still in the dungeon. She began to reproach herself that if yesterday that child had suffered because of her, she thought she just didn't want him to criticize her. Then she suggested that he would still be near the tower today. The sun shone through the window. On the chair and next to it lay bread, cheese, drink, candy, and a toy. A ray of sun still streamed through the tiny window. The girl looked with surprise at the food and drink that came from nowhere, but was so important for her survival. The same boy who had thrown pebbles at her yesterday was playing with a sword under the window. The girl timidly looked at him from above. It seemed to her that he looked like a black butterfly that wandered lost. The boy stood in a stance with a sword in his hand. He was all focused. The girl thought that it was useless to try to bloom, stuck on this nondescript land. She heard a voice in her sleep. He asked her if she had woken up yet. Opening her eyes, our heroine saw Stefan sitting half-turned at the other end of her bed. The girl insisted that she lay there for so long not of her own free will, and she tried to find the strength to at least sit up on the bed. The red-haired man asked Juliana to call him uncle. He asked her if she thought that fate was on her side, and seeing the frozen question on her face, he explained that he was talking about Behanut's condescension towards her. The girl admitted that several times after he left, she thought that she would probably die. Stefan was surprised and assumed it was probably because of his mood, but he also did not discount the possibility that Behanut had imposed some conditions on her. For example, monitor him and report everything. The girl thought that if the Archduke had made such an offer, she would certainly have met him halfway. She replied that the Archduke enjoyed watching her bend over backwards to survive. Stefan said there was a reason for this. He praised the girl, saying that she did well. And be that as it may, Behanut did not want to throw mud at the family. After all, the previous Archduke gave his life for her. The guy said that no one from the outside could find out the truth that she was fake. The poem advised the girl to rejoice because she would be married to a man from a magnificent family. He assured her that when the time came, she could do whatever she wanted. But the girl recalled that she had the mark of a brothel on her stomach, and there was nothing she could do to remove it. Stefan said that her future husband would not be able to recognize this scar, and if he suddenly finds out, he will begin to cry that they tried to sell her, living in a hut, to a brothel. He assured that if she was thinking about escaping, then she should have refrained. After all, a group of bandits lived at the foot of the mountain, and if she wanders through the forest and gets caught by them, they will rape her. And after that, she will give birth to a child from someone unknown, and will, like a mare, give birth again and again. He said that if she did not want this for herself, then she should have been obedient. The blonde thought to herself that he was even more cruel than the brothel. He even threatened to do everything himself. Stefan reported that from today her training will resume, and also that her friends will be invited, and the man who will become her husband will also come. But as soon as Stefan left the room, our heroine immediately called Balin, and she told everything that happened during this time. The maid shared a rumor that Mrs. Paula had met with the Archbishop, and all the time while the girl was sick, inside the mansion there were only rumors about the imminent arrival of Juliana's future husband. The girl was drinking tea, recently presented to her by a caring maid. It was sweet and tasty, so her strength increased and her mood improved a little. Our heroine walked along the corridor and wondered what she should do. She decided when Juliana's friends came to ask to leave and go to the art store. This was a reason to continue the search for Johannes. On the way, Quentin met her. He told the girl that His Highness was calling her. She held a hoop with a canvas in her hands and assured that she should go to an embroidery lesson, which would begin soon. The servant snatched the embroidery hoop from Juliana's hands, and he clarified that there is no need to suggest that His Highness wait for her. The guy left, taking his work with him. She asked him to wait. It was a gift she wanted to give to her grandmother. The Archduke was waiting for them in the garden. He held a book in his hands. The girl greeted His Highness. He said briefly, "Brother?" The girl corrected herself. "Brother, I have classes." The guy was surprised that his uncle changed his plans. The girl was confused, and she couldn't understand how he knew what Stefan was up to. The brunette squinted his eyes at the fake. He said that according to rumors, Dirk would come, but the girl did not know who they were talking about, and clarified who it was. Beanut explained to her that this was Juliana's childhood friend, and she will marry him. The girl remembered that Stefan told her about this today, and she wondered what the Archduke thought about this. Did he think about sending the fake Julia until nothing happened? She asked if she should, but the guy didn't let her finish, and he briefly told her yes. Our heroine thought that the Barenhag family must have carefully chosen the most advantageous match for her husband, so that they are all the same and similar to the Archduke and Stephen. A black butterfly fluttered nearby. The girl said that she likes black butterflies, and that she has a person whom she remembers. She asked her brother if he loved them too. He mysteriously said, "Who knows?" The girl asked that if he didn't love them, then why did they always fly next to him? The guy said that butterflies and flowers are beautiful. There was already one on his finger. Then he grabbed a fragile insect, and he said that greed has its price. He had the satisfied look of a predator. Our heroine was confused and scared. She never expected such a turn. Meanwhile, the Archduke put the caught butterfly in a red cloth. The girl realized that the Archduke did not want to go for a walk or collect butterflies. He just wanted to play a cloying and intrusive game. The Archduke was lying on the sofa. He had in his hand that canvas with the caught butterfly. He looked at the package and reasoned, Juliana Maria, trying to understand where she was real. And despite the fact that she is an aristocrat to the core, when she turned around, she pretended to be ashamed. The butler who entered interrupted the gentleman's reasoning. He informed His Highness that Princess Brit had sent him a letter written in her own hand. The man was holding a tray in his hands, and on it was a bundle of paper tied with a ribbon with a seal. He said he would leave it on the side table, and he assured that a quick answer would definitely please the princess. The Archduke agreed that this should be done. Then the butler saw a hidden and trembling puppy, and he asked if he had already been given a name. The gentleman answered, Maria. The girl was receiving an embroidery lesson. The teacher assured the lady that her embroidery was beyond praise, that her butterfly turned out to be very skillful. The girl continued to work with the needle, completing the design with a pattern of small flowers. She thought that if she hadn't said then that she liked butterflies, she would probably now be able to fly freely into the sky. The blonde remembered the insulting words thrown at her then. It was unacceptable for such a dirty slut to love beautiful things like a normal person. That's why he probably thought of getting rid of everything that she liked or might like in the future. She tried to understand if this meant that in the future he would want her to stop loving something. And if this is so, then it would be better to love him himself. She thought it was impossible to even imagine. After all, there had to be a reason why he cared so much about his fake sister. What the girl loved remains in her past. She loved her family endlessly, mother, father, sisters, but they were all there on that fateful day. But there were still Beline, Laurel, and Tia, and the girl had to take care of them. There was a knock on the door of the room. The blonde hoped that it was Belin who allowed her to enter, but it was a man. The servant reported that His Highness the Archduke was waiting for her, and he asked Mrs. Juliana to hurry up. The butler walked ahead and the girl trotted after him. She prayed that at least he would decide not to marry her to Dirk. Already standing in front of the door, she consoled herself with the hope that it was something insignificant. The servant knocked on the door, and he informed His Highness that he had brought Lady Juliana. He allowed me to enter. Beanut stood leaning on the table. He held his temple with his hand. It looked like he was struggling with a headache. The girl thought to herself that the Archduke looked tired, and she couldn't understand why he might need her at such a time. The guy asked Juliana to come closer. He took the frame from the table and handed it to her. He said it was a gift. Under the glass was the same butterfly. The girl picked up the frame and began to look at it. Her hands began to tremble involuntarily. Behanut saw the girl's reaction. He was surprised and upset that she didn't like it. She replied that she liked live butterflies, and there were tears in her eyes. The Archduke said he liked it. He walked over and grabbed her face. I was surprised that she was crying. After all, they said that she was a whore. She confirmed, saying that everything was correct. He ordered to prove it. The girl asked why she had to prove something. Behanut insisted that she was contradicting herself. He clenched his fists in rage. The fake Juliana replied that there was a brothel sign on her stomach, and she asked if he wanted her to show it to him right now and here. She wondered to herself what part of her made the Archduke doubt. The guy recalled his opinion that the soul is hidden in the eyes. He assured that he did not see that soul of a liar in her eyes, that her eyes were full of emptiness. The girl retorted that it was dark now, so he couldn't see properly. The Archduke threw the girl onto his desk and loomed over her with his whole body. There was fear and hopelessness in her eyes. The guy told her to forget about her eyes. He said that if she moved, she would become a corpse. The girl remembered the Archduke's opinion on preserving virginity before marriage, and she thought that just because of such a liar as she, he definitely would not want to tarnish his noble faith. She thought that if she lay there like that, as if she was used to it, he would soon lose all interest in her. The girl turned to His Highness and asked him to wait. He barked at her that he would kill her if she even moved. She asked him to stop, but the guy firmly grabbed her hand with his hand and, spreading her legs, began to kiss her breasts. She tried to say something else, but he covered her mouth with his hand. The girl bit him with her teeth as hard as she could. The guy pulled his hand back and jumped to the side. The blonde took advantage of the moment and quickly ran away from his office. Beanut was left standing with clenched fists alone at the office desk. And our heroine, leaning back against the door, took a breath. Her face was all crimson. Exhaling noisily, she thought that she just wanted to live quietly and disappear like a shadow. And she couldn't understand why she became a prisoner in this castle. The next day, on the way to class, our heroine ran into the Archduke. But he did not react in any way to her appearance, pretending as if nothing had happened in his office yesterday. Baleen apologized to her mistress, but insisted that it was important. She said that Tia ran away and the maids went to look for her. But lately, the puppy has been showing more and more curiosity and exploring everything. The girl asked the maid where the puppy should go. Belin hesitated and said that it looked like Tia ran to His Highness's room. 2 cheerful puppies were playing in the Archduke's bedroom. The girl grabbed her head, not knowing what to do. She asked the maid if the Archduke himself knew about the presence of her dog. Belin admitted that after waiting on the stairs for a long time, she looked through the crack to find out when His Highness would come out. However, she saw that Tia was playing with another puppy. and Her Highness noticed the animal and watched it closely, and she thought that he immediately guessed how Tia got to him. Valen suggested that there was a misunderstanding, and he thought that the lady had released the puppy specifically to attract his attention. And the blonde thought to herself that there was nothing strange if the Archduke thought so. After all, a woman could demonstratively drop her handkerchief or, as if by mistake, spill tea on her clothes. You could also attract attention by leaving something on his property and pretend it was an accident. And for him, it was all quite familiar. The girl thought that she would be grateful if Behanut did not treat her in any special way, and she asked the maid to keep an eye and then report to her when the room was empty to call Tia. The blonde walked down the steps. She was still glad that Tia did not get into trouble over such a large area. And then she felt eyes on her. Turning her head, she saw the Archduke. The girl did not know how long he had been watching her. And was it an accident, or did he decide to keep an eye on her? But then she decided that it was not his style to willingly bow his head just to see a whore from a brothel. The next day, the moment came when Mrs. Paula was supposed to return. The embroidery work was already ready. Fake Juliana was holding a wrapped gift for her grandmother. She asked herself if she would like him. The maid was straightening the hem of her mistress's dress. Tia was nearby. The girl specially prepared a scarf with a phoenix embroidered with gold threads. When she first heard her grandmother's story at a tea party, she wanted to give her such a gift. Suddenly, the puppy bared his teeth and rushed to the door. The girls noticed that something was wrong with the dog, and she aggressively rushed at the door. Stefan soon came in. His lips were compressed. Belin said that she would go and prepare everything for the meeting with the mistress. And Juliana thought that the guy was now entering her without even knocking. Stefan picked up the puppy. He whined pitifully. He said that he had not seen each other for a long time. And turning to the girl, he said that he had been in Talsvåg for some time. He said that the place was as big as the palm of your hand. But there was a lot of noise around him. The guy was unhappy that his lands were the size of a marigold. The girl told herself that she was not interested in anything that concerned Stefan, but she never knew what information could be useful to her. The red-haired man continued the story, that on the way back he had good news for Juliana. He said that around the day after tomorrow, her friends, Dirk and Adele, whom he had talked about before, would arrive. They were brother and sister. Stefan said that when Mother returns, she will offer to organize a reception in honor of Juliana's debut in secular society. He said that if the girl's marriage took place, he would have a strong ally. The guy said that the girl would get a simple-minded and normal husband, and he can do whatever he wants. It was enough for her to make her face sweet and friendly. He said that she was obliged to help him get the powers of the dark family. Of course, if she did not want to publicize her vulgar origin. The maid was knocking on the door. She asked for forgiveness for interrupting their conversation, and she reported that Mrs. Paula was entering through the main entrance. Stefan turned his head towards the maid. He said it was time for them to go. At that moment, our heroine understood that she must die but cannot escape his clutches. This house was unintentionally too empty, and the only consolation for the girl was the return of her grandmother. Madame Paula asked Juliana if she missed her. The girl replied that she missed her grandmother every day. The lady thanked everyone for coming out and making her happy. She assured that traveling in a carriage takes much more energy than one might imagine. And she suggested, since everyone had gathered together for the first time, she offered to drink tea. Soon the four were sitting at the table. Paula said she had a gift for Juliana. She said that she saw it for sale at dealers and immediately thought of it. The lady showed off a scarf with a colored pattern. The girl looked at the gift. She thought that such bright colors of red and blue drawings must have been extremely expensive. Paula thought the item was somewhat specific, and she asked if her granddaughter liked her gift. The girl said he was very handsome, but I thought it was very expensive, and she wondered if she, not a real granddaughter, should have accepted such a gift. Stefan told Juliana to accept this as a sign of her mother's sincerity, and he was sure that the scarf suited her. The girl thanked her grandmother and promised to take care of this scarf. The guy said that since they were gathered here, he would like to say whether it was time for them to have a reception in honor of Juliana's debut in secular society. Stefan said that the arrival of Dark and Adele would be very welcome, that they would be staying with them for a while. Paula said that it was a little late for a debut. After all, this is initially done around the age of 15. She said that, however, she would like to be properly prepared. And she said that in about a month, they will plan for Juliana's debut. Stefan assured his mother that he would undertake to prepare the invitations. Paula saw Behanut's expression, and she asked why he was so dissatisfied and was he really against it. He answered briefly, no. She assumed that he, as an older brother, was worried about his sister's preparations for marriage. He replied that everything was wrong. My grandmother remembered that as a child, the harder he was beaten, the more he denied it. Behanut sat silently, looking down into his cup. Stefan asked his mother how the archbishop was doing. She replied that he was looking forward to news about Behanut's marriage. The next day, Tia hid again, and the girl and Belen searched the entire mansion. But the puppy appeared in the hands of the Archduke. The blonde sincerely apologized for repeating this mistake, and she was glad to herself that, fortunately, the Archduke did not reprimand her. And Balin promised the lady to be more attentive in future. But 2 days later, the puppy ran away again. And after that, the girl encountered the Archduke 3 times, but every time she avoided him. She didn't know how to accept what happened. And I wanted time to go faster. However, on the day when the Archduke summoned the girl to his place, she had to determine her relationship with him. Fahanet said she was hiding well, and he asked if she had a reason to run away from him. She replied that she was not rewarded, and she asked to give her a gold coin as a reward. The guy asked if this was enough. The girl replied that if he gave her a gold coin, then she would have nothing more to desire.